click here for part 1. You sure you don't want to watch part 1? Makes a lot more sense if you watch part 1. Don't say I didn't warn you. Too late now. I've said the science is unhelpful, and this gives a great example of why.
Science time.
Protein exists in all these different forms in differing amounts. Proteins are made up of amino acids, which are like letters of the alphabet. A complete protein has enough letters to make the word you want. Incomplete proteins have lots of the same letter, but not enough of the letters that you want in order to bust out that big word score. Exactly. What's the point of the Q if matey's hoarding all the U's? It's cheating. Yeah, look, Leroy, maybe put on your vest. Science has found a bunch of ways over the years to rank proteins. The latest vogue is protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, or PDCAAS, or PDCAAS. Here's a list. This method ranks proteins on 2 things: the amino acid requirement in humans and the ability of humans to digest it. Basically, does it cover our basic requirements? And if it does, can we digest it to use it?
Yeah, but that's obvious. I mean, how else would you do it?
Mate, you have to realise, these guys used to measure protein by the PER, which was the amino acid requirement in growing rats, which are like noticeably different to humans, you know, with all that fur. Or they used the BV method, which would measure nitrogen absorption as the basis. But this ignored stuff like whether you actually digested it, and was looking more at stuff like the maximum potential quality rather than a true estimate of quality at the levels that you might require it.
Well, like shopping around for a new car based on who won the F1 Constructors' Championship when you just want to run around and you're looking at part exchange?
Exactly. PDCAAS works out the protein quality based on the amino acid requirements of a 2 to 5-year-old, thought to be the most nutritionally demanding group, adjusted for digestibility. Basically, they compare the amino acid profile of a specific protein against the standard amino acid profile, and the top mark you can get is 1.
What, like comparing every car to a 5-door hatchback and then some poxy 5-door hatchback as best you can get?
Yep. And there are some other problems. If the amino acids travel too far down the old gut pipe, you're less likely to absorb it for protein synthesis. And if your bacteria are having a slap-up meal with it and it's not in your poo, it'll look like you digested it, but you got nothing.
Look, I'm knackered from all this science talk. Where can I skip to?
I feel you, brother. Skip to here. Also, you can lose a whole load of amino acids through anti-nutritional factors, but the PDCA will think it's been digested, giving it a falsely high reading.
What is an anti-nutritional factor?
Things in food that stop you digesting and absorbing protein. And here's the kicker. Some proteins contain anti-nutrients, like the dreaded trypsin inhibitors found in the old soybean and lectins found in legumes. These enzyme inhibitors interfere with digestion. You can vanquish these villains like phytic acid, oxalic acid and polyphenols through fermenting, cooking and malting, and this will increase the quality of the plant food. Oh, I know about malting. Malt shakes. Blend up chocolate ice cream. 4 scoops of Horlicks. It's like liquid Maltesers. Maltastic. But here you can see there's an issue. The good old soybean's up at 1 with its anti-nutrients that affect digestibility depending on cooking, but that doesn't count against it. PDCAAS was developed to evaluate the needs of normal children. Now, I know those little tykes need the food to grow, but I wouldn't grow off the food that most children eat, and yet they still grow. And although there is a difference between all the proteins at 1, the Brain Trust decided to give them all A's rather than using A pluses and A minuses. And if you give everybody a gold star, how do you know who's best?
Truth! You know, 1 might be alright for Mr. Andy Average, but if you're trying to lay down the hard training, that variation might make all the difference.
Since the top proteins all have different compositions, it's not crazy to think that they perform differently in the human body, in which case, you probably need to give them different scores. And for the proteins under the magic 1, it's more like mix and match. Take grain protein at 0.4 to 0.5 and pulse protein at 0.6 to 0.7, so neither's complete. Now grains have a little lysine, but plenty of methionine. But don't worry, because pulses have got loads of lysine. and a little methionine. Hey presto, you got the full spectrum and you're back at one. You might know this as the legendary rice and peas, famous dish of the Great Sprinting Island, along with curried goat and pickled pig's feet. But like I said, Putkas has its haters in the scientific community. A big reason is a bunch of World Health Organization suits back in the 90s, you know, when Die Hard 2 was coming out, decided to do this rounding down to one thing and then said that anything over one was an excess. You know, I think the decision probably would have been a bit different if the group had looked like this. Don't worry, you're safe now. Science time's over. And this is the problem. The WHO, the FDA, the FAO, all these institutions are dealing with populations of people and coming up with recommendations that you, the individual person, is then listening to. When individuals follow general guidelines for populations rather than tailored guidelines for their specific group, what you mostly end up with is sound bites, newspaper headlines, and bad advice. These guys are talking about general levels for everyone, but this is a health and fitness channel, and so generally you will require more, and specifically you will require whatever is best for you. The problem with all of this is that the meat eaters can claim that the standardization to one is unfair, and the vegans can claim you don't need to eat animal products, just have soy. And they're both right technically, and both wrong in reality.
How'd you figure that?
Forget the lab for a second and just look around you. Every individual has a different ability to digest different sources of protein. Just think about it. Some people are allergic to meat, while allergies to pulses, legumes and nuts put the kibosh on others. And if you've lived long enough, you start to realise that some foods just don't agree with you anymore, while other foods that you would have turned your nose up at in your youth now seem like a refreshing change. Stuff like peppered mackerel and pesto. So when some meathead or veg head starts yakking into camera about how they eat this way and it works for them, therefore it must work for you, I just shake my head. Yeah, I dream about a world where everyone does exactly what I want to, because it works for me, I'm not going to lie to you. But the world doesn't revolve around me. Everyone's world revolves around them. Our ability to digest protein is spectral. Some of us do better with red meat, others with white meat. Some seem to be really adapted to dairy, while it causes havoc for others. And some really struggle with pulses and legumes, even different varieties of pulses. Finding out which protein sources are best for you is a personal journey, and from a biological standpoint, is completely separate from any belief systems that you might have acquired after the age of 5. If our cells were concerned with our opinions, or the opinions of others, we'd have to survive for years without food until we came up with an ideology of what to eat. We animals are basically a convenient source of protein and fat, like bananas are a convenient source of carbs. Our cells know no morality, only the survival to reproduce. But in this convenience-driven, high-speed internet world where food is no longer inconvenient to get, the issue is more what is suitable for you. For every person that cuts out meat with positive effect, there's someone else that cuts it out with negative effect and has to go back to it after a period of time. And for every person that's wolfing down the meat with no problems, there's somebody else who's gorging themselves on meat and really messing themselves up. And dogma aside, where on the earth your protein comes from is a huge part of this. There are certain countries where the meat is so adulterated and manipulated that the removal of it from your diet completely is an absolute lifeline. But I don't think that that's because of the concept of meat itself. And I'm basing it off the proliferation of all these chronic diseases in the last 70 years since we really started using all these ridiculously unhealthy and disgusting farming practices. If you're living in a country where your government is allowing companies to boost their profits through abhorrent farming practices, then yeah, probably getting rid of the meat is likely to improve your health, because at the moment your government is just hocking up a big loogie and spitting it right on your steak. But remember, the same argument can be made for plant crops that are laced with pesticides and are bioengineered for yield and robustness. And the results of all of this fiddling and tampering will affect different people differently.
Mental doggy bag time.
You can get protein from meat or plants or both, but you've got to work out which is best for your body individually. There are many reasons or motivations that you can have to do anything, but in terms of food, the only one that counts long term is your biology. If your ideology, whatever it is in line with your biology, then it's going to work for you. So keep doing it. But if your ideology, whatever it is out of sync with your biology, you better start shopping around for another idea. This is a massive topic. I've got about 50 pages more of this stuff, so I may do some more videos, but in the meantime, I hope this helps. While you're sharpening your knife, or your fork, hit the thumbs up, have your say in the comments, babe, and if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo! Woo!